The Western pro-life movement cares about protecting young mothers and their children from harm. But historically, that's also what the law is designed to do. Will those laws be restored? Yes, they will, and we will show you how on this edition of Life Matters with your host, Brian Johnston. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life, on culture, and the very real battle, the battle of ideas. This is a battle you must engage in because that's where the battle for your culture takes place, in the realm of ideas, in the realm of the mind. That's where those ideas are kicked around, they're talked about. Finally, they're put into action, known as laws. In 1973, the laws of all 50 states were overturned, laws that had protected children in the womb, laws that carefully outlined what doctors should and should not do. The impact of that decision has been incredible. The significance for your culture, the significance to the right to life is quite extraordinary, and unless you look at it, you won't understand the dramatic changes that have faced our society and the dramatic changes that you can bring about when you apply yourself to restoring the right to life. Today's program is dedicated to an old friend of the right to life movement and an old friend of mine, Dr. Mildred Jefferson, MD. Dr. Jefferson was the first black woman to graduate from Harvard Medical School. She was an essential part of the founding of the National Right to Life Committee in 1973. I have served on the board of the National Right to Life Committee as delegate from California. And during the late 80s, early 90s, Dr. Jefferson, who had served on the board in the 70s, returned again representing Massachusetts. And Dr. Jefferson, Mildred as we called her, she made a point of befriending me. And that's always very humbling with someone who you respect and admire. When they make a point of befriending you, it really opens you up to who they are. And I have to tell you, Mildred Jefferson was an extraordinary woman. You're going to hear some quotes from her today. I'll tell you a bit about her. She was born in 1926 in the Texas Pine Country of East Texas. She was the only daughter of a black itinerant preacher. And Mildred was relatively poor, but that didn't matter. Her folks made sure she got an education. And as a young girl, she followed around the local doctor. And eventually the doctor, when she asked, she said she'd like to be a doctor. And he said to her, well, you go right ahead. That'd be great. That's an unusual response. And yet she did move forward, and we're very thankful that she pursued that profession. Why? Well, if you've been listening to Life Matters, you're starting to understand the significance to Western civilization of the role of the doctor and the good doctor. And if you have any questions about that, Dr. Jefferson is going to comment briefly on that. But go back to our podcast, if you want to, podcast 38. We talk about Western civilization, what it really is, and how important it is for you to understand it. Also, podcast 33, we talk about the nature of the medical profession. We're all dependent on doctors, on the kindness and the ethics of the medical profession, because that's the profession you go to when you really need someone. This is absolutely essential to understand. Understand the ideas that are the underpinning of your society. If you miss those ideas, if you don't stand for them, we will lose them. Dr. Jefferson, as I said, befriended me when I was on the board of National Right to Life and became a good friend. She, she offered casual medical advice at times when I would talk to her. But really an extraordinary woman. If you see a picture of her, I have to tell you, I didn't think she was born in 1926. An extremely beautiful woman. And I think you will see that if you see photos of her. Quite a stunning woman, very young looking, and yet very, very wise and brilliant woman who is significant to the Right to Life cause. So this first interview, you're going to hear a little bit from Dr. Jefferson. And she's going to talk about her role as a physician and her concern about the right to life, and specifically what it means for the medical profession and what it means for society. And this is Dr. Mildred Jefferson.
I became a physician in order to help save lives, not to destroy them. My earnest effort is to uphold medicine as a high calling, a sacred profession. The Hippocratic tradition, fused with the Judeo-Christian sanctity of life ethic, requires that a doctor demand of oneself a high standard of moral commitment and a code of disciplined personal conduct before undertaking the responsibility for another person's life. The United States Supreme Court's 1973 decisions on abortion gave to my profession an almost unlimited license to kill when the High Court made getting rid of a baby a private decision between a woman and a doctor. The state may make regulations to the point of prohibiting abortion if it chooses, only in approximately the last 3 months of pregnancy, and even then may make no law which would overrule a doctor's medical judgment. There is a lure in this license which has a hook for the unwary doctor. The doctor who willingly accepts destroying life will have no grounds on which to object if the state should compel that doctor to destroy life. I will not accept the proposition that the doctor should relinquish the role of healer to become the new social executioner. It is unconscionably unfair that the victim selected on which to test this social remedy of expendable lives is the most defenseless member of the human family, the unborn child who cannot escape, cannot riot in the streets, and cannot vote. As a woman, I am ashamed that the voices raised loudest in this demand to destroy the unborn children are those of other women. Blinded by an all-absorbing selfishness, these women are trying to force the society to grant them rights without the responsibilities that our social contract demands and privileges without the payment that our moral order commands. This is a difficult situation. The woman who willingly demeans the nurturing instinct and tries instead to deny or to cancel or destroy her own unique biological capability creates a new model of female being, one who isn't changed into a man, somehow never quite grows into a woman, and becomes, in a metaphysical sense, a little bit less than human. I am at once a physician, a citizen, and a woman, and I am not willing to stand aside and allow this concept of expendable human lives to turn this great land of ours into just another exclusive reservation where only the perfect, the privileged, and the planned have the right to live.
So that's Dr. Mildred Jefferson. She's one of the founders of the National Right to Life Committee. And as I said, she actually took the time to befriend me on the National Right to Life Board, an extraordinary woman. You are listening to Life Matters. We talk about life, about the culture, and about the very real battle of ideas. And these ideas apply to you and your loved ones. We'll be right back after this.
If you have questions or comments for Life Matters, call 800-924-2490. Give us your name and the town you're calling from and a quick question or comment. You're listening to Life Matters.
Power. You're pro-life and you want to defend your position, but you're not sure what to say. That's pretty common. So get the facts you need to back up your pro-life position with the Power of 7 app. The Power of 7 gives you effective pro-life replies to 7 of the most common pro-abortion arguments. It's simple, it's easy to use, and it's free. Power of 7. Download it now at thepowerof7.org. The Power of 7, the number 7.org.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on life, on culture, and the very real battle of ideas. If you're listening to us on the radio, be sure to let us know where you listen. Give us the call letters of your station. You can let us know at Life Matters, P.O. Box 935, Sacramento, California, 95812. That's P.O. Box 935, Sacramento, California, 95812. We're part of the Right to Life movement, a movement that is much bigger than you may think. It's part of our society. It's an essential element of our society. Our founders put it in the founding documents as an essential principle to the laws that govern any nation and any just nation. And the purpose of those laws are to protect the rights of the governed, the right to life being the first and foremost. In this next segment, you're going to hear Dr. Mildred Jefferson, talk about her experiences in founding the Mass Citizens Concerned for Life. They were dealing with the abortion issue before 1973 because abortion was being liberalized in Massachusetts. Many of you in California know that we at the California Pro-Life Council also had been dealing with that before 73. And this battle was coming at us. We did not expect the Roe versus Wade decision, and that sweeping decision, if you don't know, that decision overturned the laws of all 50 states. It was only supposed to address the laws of Texas. But this was a sweeping, a progressive view of the court, where the courts create law whole cloth, and Roe versus Wade is probably the single greatest example of raw judicial power. We know that it will be overturned, and at that point it's going to take people involved in the right to life in making sure that their communities, again, restore not just protection for the innocent, but as Dr. Jefferson points out, restores an ethical medicine, restores the value to medicine that was there. Because in medicine, a doctor swears they'll always care for a patient, but never intentionally bring harm to a patient. And that baby is a patient. That's a human being in their care. This is a very important principle. It dates back literally millennia. It dates back to the Greeks and the Hippocratic Oath. It's the foundation of Western civilization. So medicine and the law are very, very important to society. Dr. Mildred Jefferson understood that. She spoke out for that. She served in many capacities in the National Right to Life Committee, also in various state right to life organizations. She was eloquent and insightful, but more than anything else, she was committed to take action. And you should be too. So again, this is Dr. Mildred Jefferson speaking of the right to life.
The Massachusetts was selected by the population controllers because we have lots of universities and colleges in Massachusetts. You're often the leading edge for political and social change. And at that time, Massachusetts had a Catholic population of over 50% of its total population. The reasoning of the population controllers was if they could get a state like Massachusetts, which is a commonwealth, to tumble into the pro-abortion column, then the others would fall like dominoes. So I'm a medical doctor, a general surgeon, and in Massachusetts, the wedge for motivating the start of a right to life movement was from doctors. There was a famous Dr. Lynch, an OBGYN, who long before much of the rest of the country recognized what the population control movement was doing, had fixed firmly on the things that were undermining the safe and serious practice of medicine. Then he joined with Dr. Joseph Stanton, who, combining the dynamic internist with the OBGYN, plans were made for starting our first pro-life organization, and that eventually evolved into the Value of Life Committee, which became actually our first. And the motivation for jump-starting that into action was a resolution introduced in 1970 to the American Medical Association. Didn't condone abortion, just sort of bent its founding position against it, so that a doctor doing abortion under a state's laws would not then be subject to malpractice action because the act itself was still against the law. Since we in Massachusetts had already organized, we were in better position to come together to help with the national organizing that led to the development of National Right to Life Committee. Okay. So that we had already got our charter of state incorporation about 10 days to 2 weeks before Doe and Roe were handed down in 73. So in June of 73, when it became necessary to launch National Right to Life Committee, we had the ground experience to be able to participate, and I had the honor of giving the keynote address that launched National Right to Life Committee. And I served 3 terms as president from 1975 through 78. In fact, it was during those 3 years that it became a national organization, because our first 2 presidents could not get reelected, so they didn't have the time to do the organizational work we needed. But in that 3 years, we were able to go from lists of a few activists on paper with a lot of other telephones to active state organizations in all 50 states and some of its territories.
That's Dr. Mildred Jefferson. She's the former president of the National Right to Life Committee, a brilliant woman. She was the first black woman graduate of the Harvard Medical School, and she made a significant contribution to the Right to Life cause, and we do regard her quite highly. Dr. Jefferson had another saying that I want you to know, and she would talk about crisis pregnancy centers. And as you know, I'm a big fan of crisis pregnancy centers. I think they're important. I think that they really fulfill a Christian responsibility to care for those in need, what's known as a work of corporal mercy. I was naked and you clothed me. I was hungry and you fed me. And that's what we have in a crisis pregnancy center, is you're helping that young mother and her child. But in point of fact, it doesn't do anything to change the laws to protect that child. And that's the most important challenge we face. The reason we have the abortion holocaust we've seen, the reason that these women feel pressured into abortion, is because the law has promoted and blessed it. And in many states, the law is paying for these abortions. The law is doing this. Dr. Jefferson put it this way: we're in a battle. And in this battle, crisis pregnancy centers are like the Red Cross. They're the ambulances for the wounded, and there's wounded in this battle. But in point of fact, you don't win wars with ambulances. You've got to be involved in the actual battle of ideas that's allowing the killing. This war of ideas is being lost to the degree you don't get involved. To the degree you do get involved, that you understand who the pro-life candidates are that will put pro-life laws in effect, that will protect the vulnerable, that will speak up on important issues of medical ethics. If you can't see those distinctions, then you've lost in this battle. Because the battle of ideas really is about whether or not innocent lives will be protected. That's been the basis of civilization. The purpose of law is to protect the lives of those that can't protect themselves. We've been listening to Life Matters, and specifically to some of the works of Dr. Mildred Jefferson, MD, the first black woman graduate of Harvard Medical School, one of the founders of the National Right to Life Committee, and a past president of the National Right to Life Committee.
Life Matters continues after this.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo, and I was very excited when I heard about LifeFest Film Festival. LifeFest is the film festival dedicated to showcasing films that affirm the intrinsic worth of innocent human life and the profound significance of each life. One seemingly insignificant person can in fact change the whole world in which he or she lives. That one singular life ends up being of vital importance. I'm so glad to hear that you are cherishing that in this film festival and are committed to artfully and creatively protect the lives of those who can't possibly promote themselves.
Life Film Fest is dedicated to bring the message of life to Hollywood and to our culture. Go to lifefilmfest.com and get your tickets now. That's lifefilmfest.com.
Find out about the exciting cultural change impacting Hollywood. Go to lifefilmfest.com. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. You know, if you're listening to this on podcast, I'd like to challenge you to go back to the beginning of this podcast, and you can hear Paul Kinney. Paul Kinney, by the way, is one of the best voiceover artists in the industry. He does our voiceover. He talks about the Western pro-life movement, focusing on protecting mothers and their babies. That's an interesting thing to say. But if you think about it, it will help you understand that the pro-life, the right to life movement is actually worldwide, and it's not just about babies. That's right. Now, in the Western world, because of Roe versus Wade, the right to life was removed from the law, and specifically regarding the lives of those children in the womb in abortion. And so we're accustomed to equating the abortion issue and the right to life. But the right to life is much bigger. Our founders were thinking much bigger when they used that phrase, the right to life, when they invoked the right to life as a God-given right, and that the purpose of government is not to give the right, but to protect the right. And so our founders were saying that every human being has been given this right, and it's a just government's duty to protect that life and to protect the right to life, as well as the other God-given rights. This is very important if you're to understand what our challenges are. You know, in the Eastern world, think of China, for example, when they deal with the right to life, you know about the forced abortions in China. Well, those are terrible things that if you have more than one child, the government can step in and force, literally, have that baby ripped from the mother's womb and kill that baby. Well, that's a terrible thing, and yes, that's an abortion. And yes, it violates that child's right to life. But there's something bigger at stake in China. You see, the government doesn't assert a right to life or a duty to protect that right. You've been given a great gift in America because our founders asserted this right to life, and it applies to vulnerable, innocent lives, that you can't take the life of a vulnerable person simply because you have the power and ability. That's not guaranteed in the East. In fact, in China, it's not just they can kill that baby because they want to. They can kill anybody that they want to. So in China, the right to life isn't asserted at all for anyone. And if you complain about a forced abortion policy because you love babies, well, it's good that you complain about it. But the government can simply arrest you and take away your life. Every life in China is vulnerable to a government that views human beings as things. Under Marxist ideology, human beings are mere things, and those with power can dismiss or empower whichever human beings they wish in order to push their agenda. So in China, you may not be aware of this, but have you heard of the bodies exhibits that tour America and people pay money to see rubberized human bodies? I challenge you to look up the facts about where those bodies came from. Many of them were executed Chinese prisoners. Many of them were political prisoners. And before they were buried, they weren't. Once they're executed, they actually had rubber injected into their bodies, so they were rubberized and they're put on display. That's how human life is viewed in China. They don't have the right to life in China. No one has their right to life protected by the Chinese government. So again, you're going to hear just a little bit more from Dr. Jefferson. She's going to talk about her education. And I think it's very significant that she was really born into a poor family, but what they valued the most was her education.
I happened to decide as a child, after following a very wise family doctor around. This was a rural practice. It's because whenever the doctor came, people got well. It was only when I was older I recognized they didn't call the doctor unless they expected the person to recover. If he wasn't going to recover, why have the doctor make 2 trips? They would wait until the dying was finished and then go get the doctor. But anyway, when I followed him around asking questions, he was very generous and answered. And then one day I said, I think I would like to be a doctor when I grew up. He said, well, now, if you want to do that, you just go right ahead. My family did not have money, but it had land. The children don't usually notice whether they have money or not. The great concern in my family was making sure that I was educated properly, so that I had the books, I had access to things that other children didn't, because although I was living in the piney woods of East Texas, my life was in a world beyond the boundaries of the woodland.
So remember that on Life Matters, we talk about this as a battle of ideas. And the fact that Dr. Jefferson emphasizes that they didn't have a lot of money, and as a child, they emphasized her need to understand ideas and to read and get an education. It's critically important that as she became a doctor, she just didn't learn about the human body. Remember that Western medicine, the Hippocratic tradition, is actually rooted in a very specific idea, and that is that human beings have intrinsic worth and value, and that a doctor should never kill that human being in their trust and care. This idea is essential to Western civilization. It's the basis for the right to life. So the emphasis that she had as a child in the realm of ideas, to study hard, these were very specific ideas. And in other nations, as I said, in the Confucius medicine, in Chinese medicine, there's some interesting things. They know about the human body and they know a lot about herbs, but that world of medicine does not have the ethical guidelines that your nation once had, that Western medicine had honored, that Dr. Mildred Jefferson just described, that the role of the doctor is very important, that they must value the life and the intrinsic dignity of the human being in their care. That life is now in their care. That idea is the foundation of both Western medicine. That idea is also the foundation for Western civilization, that you never killed the innocent vulnerable. Remember, in the 1940s, we did condemn a Western civilization. The German nation adopted an ideology that dismissed the value of individual human lives. And it was doctors who were also put on trial at Nuremberg. You need to remember that the use of medicine was applied to killing rather than curing. So ideas matter, and as a young child, Dr. Jefferson didn't get much money, but she got an education. Remember, in the battle of ideas, facts count, principles count. We are here to stand for a very basic principle, and that is that we're made by God. We're not made by our government. Government might have power, but its power is not to lord it over us, but instead to protect those that can't protect themselves, and to hold in check those who might harm others. That's why there were laws against abortion up until 1973. That's why it has been against the law to encourage committing suicide with chemicals, medical suicide, assisted suicide. Those laws were there specifically because the purpose of the law is to protect those that can't protect themselves. That's what the right to life is about. We really appreciate Dr. Mildred Jefferson. We appreciate her commitment to life. What a shining example she has been, and I hope that you get a chance to look her up. Go ahead and Google Dr. Mildred Jefferson, a great example of a great American and a great right-to-lifer.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.